the second time.
Madam Speaker, I beg to move that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Proceeds of Crime Act, Chapter 1127, and the Central Bank Act, Chapter 7902, be now read a second time. Madam Speaker, you may have heard, or the population may have heard, an announcement by the Minister of National Security with respect to a national security initiative to deal with the proceeds of crime. Essentially, this is all about dealing with the proceeds of crime, where, as far as the Ministry of National Security has advised us, there is too much dirty money in circulation. I don't want to use the term that is universally used for that kind of money. So I will use the term dirty and the term clean. I don't think the nomenclature or the vocabulary with respect to money has kept pace with what is politically correct. So I'll use the word dirty and I'll use the word clean. So others may choose to use black and white. That's your business. So, Madam Speaker, the National Security has advised that we need to deal with the situation that currently exists with dirty money being the proceeds of money laundering, drug trafficking, and corruption. At the present time, the Central Bank Act allows for the bank to demonetize currency. The actual wording of the Central Bank Act, Section 27, is that by giving not less than 3 months' notice, the bank may cancel any banknote that it has issued. We find that we need some more flexibility. That 3 months is a minimum period. And when you're dealing with matters like this, time is of the essence. And therefore, we are changing the minimum period, and I want to stress the minimum period for canceling any banknote from 3 months to 14 days notice. So now the central bank, on the direction of the Minister of Finance, may be empowered to cancel any banknote that it has issued. And in the specific and instant case, the banknote that is being cancelled, or will be cancelled, is the $100 bill. That is the currency of choice of persons who are involved in illicit activities of various kinds: smuggling, drug trafficking, money laundering, corruption, human trafficking, you name it. The bill of choice among criminals is the $100 bill. And therefore, in an effort as a national security initiative to stamp out these illegal activities, the government, on advice from the Ministry of National Security, has made a decision that it will cancel all $100 bills in circulation. May I say at this time, Madam Speaker, that during the period before the date of cancellation, the old notes and the new notes will be valid tender, so that persons can still use the old $100 bill and the new $100 bill from the appointed day. Is that the correct terminology? From the appointed day, which will be the beginning of the process, the citizens or anybody using Trinidad and Tobago tender will be able to use both the $100 bill existing, the cloth or paper note, or the new polymer note. At the end of the period, only the new polymer note, the new $100 bill, which has a number of new security features aimed at preventing counterfeiting, will become legal tender, and the old note will no longer be usable or valid as legal tender in Trinidad and Tobago. And, pardon? Certainly. From the appointed day, which will be in the very near future, to the date of cancellation of the banknote, the $100 bill, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm being corrected here. The appointed date is the date of cancellation of the note.
That's the date of demonetization.
The date of demonetization. From the date of notice.
Correct.
The date of notice. When the bank gives notice that it intends to cancel a bank, from that day to the date of cancellation, which is the appointed date, during that period, however long it is, both types of currency can be used. The existing paper note and the new polymer note. When the date of cancellation arrives, only the new polymer note could be used as legal tender in Trinidad and Tobago. But there is a safeguard here for persons who may find themselves in difficulty. They may have been out of the country, they may be ill, they may be in hospital or something like that, or they're bedridden or some other reason like that. They found themselves unable to go to the bank to either deposit the existing paper notes that they have or to exchange existing paper notes for the new polymer notes. In the bill, clause 2, which amends section 27 of the Central Bank Act and inserts a new section 27A, if you look at the bill itself, the new section 27A.4 will allow the central bank to redeem at face value any of the specified notes that are presented within the period of 3 months after the appointed date, if it is satisfied that the failure to present the notes for redemption prior to the appointed date resulted from circumstances beyond the control of the true owner of the notes, or that there was some good or sufficient reason for the failure. So if, and the best example is somebody was out of the country or somebody was in hospital. If that person cannot either deposit their existing $100 bills or cannot go to the bank to exchange their existing $100 bills for new polymer notes, the central bank is now being given a discretion under rules that will be approved by the minister to redeem at face value for a period of 3 months after the appointed date. So whatever the appointed date is, which is the date of cancellation of the notes, from that day, the central bank is being given the discretion for a 3-month period beyond the date of cancellation of the notes to redeem notes for persons who found themselves in difficulty and for one reason or another were unable to come into the bank to deposit or change out the notes. Because all things in life are not perfect, the bill also at the new section 27A, which is in clause 2 of the bill, will give the minister, by order, the power to extend the date or period in subsections 1 and 4 in any case or class of cases where he considers it appropriate to do so. So if for some reason, which we do not foresee at this point in time, if for some reason it is necessary to extend the date, the minister, on the direction of cabinet, will extend the date for cancellation or the date for redemption of notes after the period of cancellation and within that 3-month period. So that is just to give us some checks and balances there if for some reason there is some problem. Section 27A.2, the new section 27A.2, indicates that on or from the appointed date, the specified note shall cease to be the currency or be legal tender in Trinidad and Tobago, and subject to subsection 4, which is the subsection that deals with the redemption after the cancellation date, shall for all purposes be cancelled and be of no value. The bank is required to redeem at face value any notes which are presented for redemption. So if someone comes in with, say, 10 $100 bills, the bank will redeem them and give them 10 $100 bills, or a commercial bank will redeem and give them 10 $100 bills if the new polymer security features note. We are also amending the Proceeds of Crime Act to give the government the flexibility to change the amount that is now considered to be a large transaction for those of you who deal in large amounts of cash. At this point in time, if you have a transaction of $90,000 or above, the bank must report it as a large transaction. There's no, the bank has no discretion in this matter right now. So if somebody comes in and transacts a transaction of $90,000 or more, the bank must report it to the Financial Intelligence Unit. We are also changing giving the government the flexibility to adjust the amount that would require the intervention of the internal controls in the bank, the officer in the bank that deals with know your customer and so on. At the present time, the trigger is $90,000 in cash, for example. And we are giving the government the flexibility to adjust that figure from $90,000. Sure?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Forgiving Way.
I noticed that whereas you're moving from a certain figure of $90,000, you're not moving towards any figure, but there's a flexibility. So there is a lack of certainty. So can you indicate to us what is the figure that you have in contemplation? Because there's need for certainty for the customer, from the customer perspective.
All of this will be revealed in due course. When you're doing these things, you can't reveal everything immediately. It will be revealed when the appointed day is revealed, and the amount of adjustment will be revealed all at the same time. And other measures that may apply to the changing of currency, because what you don't want is people walking around with large amounts of cash. So there'll be some adjustments in terms of the amount of cash. But all of that will be revealed in due course. When you're doing these things, this is a national security measure. I am dealing with the banking side of things because this is an amendment to the Central Bank Act. But if you also look carefully, you will see you're also amending the Proceeds of Crime Act. And this is all to deal with dealing with criminals. The amount of the adjustment will be, the public will be notified at the same time that the appointed day is declared. Okay? And as I said, that will be in the very near future, but we will not indicate that tonight. We have no intention of indicating tonight. I apologize to any members who thought that we would. We have no intention of indicating tonight when this will take place or what the adjustment in the amount will be. But it will be revealed to all and sundry very soon. So the bill at clause 3 and 4 gives the government, through its relevant ministers, the Minister of Finance, in terms of the financial obligation regulations, and the Minister of National Security, in terms of the Proceeds of Crime Act, the authority to reduce or increase, as the case may be, the amount of currency or the size of a transaction that can be done in the banking sector without attracting the attention of the various inspectors, the Financial Intelligence Unit, the in-house staff that deal with Know Your Customer. Now, Madam Speaker, let me just return to exactly what we're all about. I will try my best to make sure there's absolutely no ambiguity. At this point in time, Madam Speaker, under the Central Bank Act, the bank is restrained at this point in time to give 3 months' notice if it decides to cancel a note. I'll give an example of the 1 cent coin. The bank took a year to do that. It took 1 year to do that. So the 3 months is a minimum. But if, for example, the bank wishes to cancel a banknote, which is what is taking place now, then they have to give 3 months' notice. And we felt that we needed more flexibility. So we are changing the minimum notice from 3 months to 14 days. Secondly, from the time that notice is given, and until the time the banknote in question is actually cancelled, both types of banknote will be allowed to be used as legal tender. So during the period, people can use the existing $100 bill, or they can use the new banknote when they get them. I just want to make that clear. But at the end of that period, all that can be done is that if you have some sort of difficulty, you can go and present these banknotes and they will be redeemed. But you can't use them for trade. You can't use them for commerce. You can't use them to buy things after the period of cancellation. You can redeem them during a 3-month period, but you have to show some sort of special circumstance and, you know, explain. You can't use it during the period? Yes, yes, of course, yes. And Madam Speaker, the circumstances by which the bank will redeem or not redeem, as the case may be, this is contained in the bill at this point in time. And that is in clause 2, 27A6, which says the bank, with the approval of the minister, may prescribe such conditions and procedures as it considers appropriate for the redemption of specified notes in accordance with sections 3 and 4. So just let me make that very clear, that this is not an arbitrary thing. It is not a whimsical thing. It is not up to anyone but the central bank. And the bank will prescribe or may prescribe such conditions and procedures as it considers appropriate for the redemption of specified notes in accordance with subsection 3 and 4. And this is to provide as much certainty as is possible and to remove as much ambiguity as is possible from what is determined to be a circumstance beyond someone's control. In other words, it's not up to the individual. The bank will do so in consultation with the government, with the relevant sections of the government. Now, Madam Speaker, I just want to briefly indicate when other countries have done demonetization, the reasons why countries do demonetization. As I indicated in this particular case, this is being driven by the Ministry of National Security based on their own information. But in addition, Madam Speaker, when you have too much informal money or dirty money in the system, you have the growth of a dual economy, Madam Speaker. This causes great difficulty in the estimation of actual economic activity in the country in terms of what your actual GDP is and what your reported GDP is in terms of economic growth, in terms of availability of cash, in terms of money supply, in terms of actually what is going on in the country. The official statistics are often quite different to what is actually happening, and the reason for that is an underground economy and a lot of dirty money circulating, Madam Speaker. And any country will want to try to address the pernicious effects of an underground economy. You also have loss of revenue to the country. Because it's dirty money, it's not reported. So nobody is going to declare that they're in receipt of the proceeds of crime. Nobody is going to declare that they are in receipt of the proceeds of drug trafficking or money laundering, as the case may be. So that from a revenue point of view, you would have a loss of revenue to the country, Madam Speaker. I don't need to go into the security issues of dirty money. I would leave that to my colleagues. I would simply say that this initiative has been planned for quite a long time. There have been a number of meetings with all of the players involved, with the central bank. We've had meetings with the commercial banks to work out the logistics as to exactly how this operation will be executed with greatest efficiency. And the government is going to do its best to make sure that this thing is done quickly, efficiently, and with minimum inconvenience to citizens. But I can't underestimate, Madam Speaker, the pernicious effects of dirty money on a society. I can't underestimate it. There is so much of that circulating in Trinidad and Tobago, and it is directly linked to the criminal underworld. At this time, Madam Speaker, I would leave the aspects of security to the other members of the government. I beg to move.
Honourable members, I shall now propose the question for debate. The question is that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Proceeds of Crime Act, Chapter 1127, and the Central Bank Act, Chapter 7902 be now read a second time. Member for point of appeal.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to join this debate. Listening to the Minister of Finance and piloting this bill, I think I'm a bit more confused than when we started off. He added no clarity as to the appointed date and some dates that we thought that the country was looking for tonight. I understand what he said in his speech. Madam Speaker, listening to the Minister of National Security yesterday in his release, his post-cab briefing, the Minister of National Security gave the impression to the country, and given that the Senate is being asked to sit tomorrow, that the piloting and the dates of this new $100 bill would come into place very soon. I want to start off from the offset that the opposition and the opposition leader is in full support of this new $100 polymer bill. Anything that plays a part in, to use the words of the Minister of Finance, to take away dirty money off the system, out of the system, the opposition is in full support of that measure. When we looked yesterday or last night, when I looked at the proposed new $100 bill, Madam Speaker, the features on it, it really augurs well for our country and it augurs well for our citizenry. You would remember, Madam Speaker, back in, I think was in December 2014, under the Kamla Persad-Bissessar-led government, that the $50 polymer bill was introduced by the PP government under the leadership of the governor at the time, Jawala Rambaran. And it had the same features as this $100 bill that is being proposed to be circulated in the system, Madam Speaker. And it augurs also well for the visually impaired individuals of the country with the $50 bill that I think the circle, they can feel the circle, a raised circle, and it can tell you that it's a $50 bill. And I think this $100 polymer bill that has been introduced for the visually impaired is a raised X. You might never know. So, Madam Speaker, as far as the visually impaired, it's a good sign, it's a progressive sign for the country. We also ask that we are hoping that in the future, in the very near future, that the other denominations, the $1, the $20, the $5, $10, will also be converted to the polymer and be able to assist the visually impaired in going about their normal day in business. Madam Speaker, but when we looked at this bill, when I look at this bill, and I want to also recognize, Madam Speaker, the government used Standing Order 64(1)B here today to bring a bill in Parliament without a normal notice, dispensing with the normal notice. So when they brought that piece, using that piece of standing order, we thought that it was really from a security aspect, and we were going to hear some dates being announced here tonight. But I did not hear any dates from the Minister of Finance. When is going to be the start date of the issue of the new bills? So, Madam Speaker, being that is, as is said by the Minister of Finance, the country, the opposition has some concerns when the timing of this bill will be introduced into the country, into the system. So, for example, the country got the impression that it was going to be introduced as soon as maybe, or the notice being given as soon as Monday. All right, maybe, as the Minister of Finance says to me, maybe. But when you look at this Christmas period, Madam Speaker, and we are hoping that it does not, it can cause panic and chaos in the system if it's not properly managed, the introduction of this new $100 bill, which will coexist with the old $100 bill. And if enough lead time isn't given to remove the old $100 bill, it can cause chaos and panic in the system, especially during this Christmas period. And we are hoping that that does not happen, and the government of the day, the Minister of Finance, would really be a little bit more understanding, and the Minister of National Security will be a little bit understanding. We understand the security issues of trying to remove the old $100 bills off the system as quickly as possible. We understand that, Madam Speaker. But, Madam Speaker, to use the Minister of Finance, if you want to clean up remove dirty money, and you introduce this new bill in the system during the Christmas period. What you might find happening is that during this Christmas period, you might see a lot of businesses, if you're cleaning up the money, being now a volume of funding might start to come into in certain types of businesses, and we all know those types of businesses. And it will be all under the disguise, if they go to the bank to deposit it, Christmas sales or the growth in sales. So maybe if you really want to take this dirty money out of the system, you can really want to flag it. Maybe you might want to start it maybe in January. And then you can also track the type of businesses that are reporting huge volumes of deposits, given that it is outside of the Christmas period, where you would normally get a high growth of income or sales given the last 2 weeks before Christmas, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I put that on the table, and with good sense, I hope the ministers would take that into consideration, also the panic and chaos that it can cause during the Christmas season. I have gotten calls even last night from people of pensioners who normally they might take out all their money out of their pension checks and store it because they don't like to go to the bank, Madam Speaker. And if they have to go and change their funds that they have at home during this Christmas season, I also ask if the ministers have taken into consideration the security aspect of individuals going to the banks during the Christmas period, and the sort of banditry that goes on during the Christmas period, where people tend to be a little bit more suspect, and the crime tends to go up a little bit because of the volume of movement of individuals during the Christmas period, Madam Speaker. So I really hope that the ministers would take that into consideration. Madam Speaker, I look at Clause 27A1, Clause 227A1, and I would like to ask the Minister of Finance, why the erosion of the powers of the central bank? Because in Clause 227A1, and I want to read it, in addition to the powers of the bank under Section 27, so Section 27 of the Central Bank Act has remained. The minister may direct the bank to cancel any note issued by it by giving not less than 14 days' notice published in the Gazette of the date of cancellation. Now, in my view, this is an erosion of the central bank, an erosion of the powers of the governor, and the minister is directing the bank, the governor of the bank, to issue when he or she feels, whoever is the Minister of Finance, when they want to do this issue, Madam Speaker. And we have a serious problem with that, because you have seen over time the central bank is an independent institution, and we should really safeguard our institutions and the independence of those institutions, Madam Speaker. And I would like to ask, really and truly, what was the reason by the Minister of Finance of putting this clause 27A1 and the erosion of the central bank and the central bank governor, Madam Speaker? Clause 424, I'm happy for that, Madam Speaker, where it talks about if you pass the cancellation date and you have a legitimate reason, the individuals can go to the central bank and redeem their notes, Madam Speaker, once they have a legitimate reason. And maybe within that reasons, it could be a little bit clearer. I know the Attorney General and I had outside in the corridor, not Petrotrin. I asked him, and he mentioned sickness. He mentioned if you're out of the country during that period and you return, you can apply to the central bank to redeem whatever funds you might have had at home at the old notes, Madam Speaker. But sickness, travel, there might be other legitimate reasons. So I don't know if that discretion solely lies with the central bank to make that decision. Clause 424. Clause 24. So I seek an expansion of the reasons that one can apply to the central bank to redeem old notes, Madam Speaker. Sure.
For you to 6, 5 and 6. Okay, the extension of the date, as I indicated, and 6 as well. The conditions on redemption. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister of Finance. I want to go to clause 3, where it talks about the Proceeds of Crime Act is amended by deleting the words $90,000 or such other amount as, and it piggybacks on clause 4, which is on clause 4B, which is also deleting the word 90,000 and substituting the word an amount prescribed by the minister. I know my colleague had asked, what is that amount? It's unknown at this point in time. I know the $90,000, and I stand to be corrected, Minister of Finance, is that if you deposit in funds of more than $90,000 in the bank, you do a source of funding. Where do you get the funds from? I think it used to be 60,000. I think it went up to 90,000. Correct. All right. So that when you go to the bank and you deposit in funds more than 90,000, you declare a source of fund. That's a given, and the bank then reports it to the proper institutions, and the institutions, whether it is considered a red flag or not, given the type of business, Madam Speaker. So that what is happening here now is that the minister is deleting the word 90,000 and an unknown amount, and that unknown amount can change based on, by an order of the Minister of Finance. So that, Minister of National Security. So 90,000, Madam Speaker, when this law comes into place, these amendments, the 90,000 can go down to maybe 50,000. It could go down maybe to 10,000. It can come back up. So we are known, there's a known about that particular amount, and we feel that that amount should be fixed. And if the amount has to be changed for clarity for the citizenry, even for the business individuals, that there's some clarity in a fixed amount, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, I also like to bring to the attention of the ministers some concerns by the Muslim community. I am sure the Attorney General, Member San Fernando West, might be well aware of some of the concerns of this, the change of the new $100 bill raised by the Muslim community. I would just like to draw out a couple of them, Madam Speaker, if you allow me to read. Many Muslims do not use the present banking system due to the Quranic prohibition on interest. They save their money otherwise, and they're asking how will they be treated at the commercial banks when they attempt to change their legally earned cash. Point 3, will Muslims and others be considered as money launderers due to having large sums of cash? So, Madam Speaker, the Muslim community has a concern of the time frame that people got an impression from the Minister of National Security yesterday when he released the statement of this new $100 bill. So that really and truly we are asking on behalf of the citizenry of this country that there's enough lead time so businesses and normal individuals can have a seamless transition with this new $100 bill, with the old $100 bill, Madam Speaker. So, Madam Speaker, as I close, really and truly, I would like to say that the opposition is in full support of this new measure, this $100 bill, but there are some concerns we have from the unknown date. We're all for the cleaning up of the money, of the dirty money or out there in the system, Madam Speaker, but we need some clarity. Also that prescribed amount from 90,000 that is not fixed. So, Madam Speaker, in the wind-up of the Minister of Finance, I hope some clarity could be had. I thank you.
Minister of Finance? There's nobody, Member for Shogunas.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to speak on this bill, but I was hoping that the initiator of this bill, the member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, would have dealt with the rationale for this bill. Because what was given by the Minister of Finance, he spoke about that the initiative came from national security, and that therefore, when I read, so therefore I have to go on the basis of what is said in the daily newspaper. The minister have not spoken as yet. So, that there is an informal economy, there is a formal economy, there is a distinction between the formal economy, which provides white money, and therefore within the legitimate frame, and that there you have, again, in accordance with the sentiments uttered by the honourable member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West in the newspaper article, there's a distinction between the white money of the formal economy and black money of the informal economy. So Madam Speaker, and this has nothing to do with the colonial mindset. Madam Speaker, I listened to the honourable member and spoke about the dual economy, the loss of revenue to the country, and that therefore the time period will run from the date of notice to the appointed date, and there will be the coexistence of the both $100 bill, the commonly blue note, and now the polymer note. So that seems all fair and fine in that regard. But, Madam Speaker, I am very concerned about the rationale provided and the hasty introduction of this change in currency at this point in time. Madam Speaker, when you look at the newspaper, and I will not display, but I want to read because it is very pertinent in the absence of the contribution up to now of the member for Port of Spain or the Minister of National Security. This is what the Honourable Minister had to say in the newspaper of today, Friday, 6th December 2019, the Daily Express, article by Anna Ramdas, new $100 bill coming. The government is moving to crush the cash empires of criminals by removing the current Trinidad and Tobago $100 note and replacing it with a new polymer bill, which has added security features. You can't fault that. Nothing is wrong with that. It was met with shock, surprise, and questions about the potential impact the move could have on the economy and business. The Honourable Minister says, I can guarantee you this. It is going to assist us in the fight against corruption and the fight against the criminal elements who must now present the money and explain where that money came from. And it goes on, Madam Speaker. It says that Young said legislation referring to the minister will be brought to Parliament today to amend the Central Bank Act to allow the demonetization process to be reduced from 3 months to a minimum of 14 days. A special sitting of the Senate will be held and so on, Madam Speaker. So what you have here is that you have, in an attempt, based on what was said, an attempt by the minister to provide a basis, a rationale for the removal of the old existing paper blue note to that of the polymer note, and that therefore this is how they're going to get money. There is no verifiable data existing to show the level of counterfeiting, or none has been presented in this House, to show verifiable data, to show the extent, based on the intelligence gathered from the newspaper report, the extent of the illicit cash financing criminal level activities. To my mind, Madam Speaker, it all appears very speculative at this point in time. And until the minister presents very hard data on this matter, it really leaves it leaves into the realm of speculation. Because you see, Madam Speaker, when you look at the experience of countries worldwide moving into demonetization. Demonetization is a simple exercise. A currency is legal tender, and when it is removed, it is demonetized. It is no longer legal tender. When you look at the experience of the world, then you see that you have serious problems. Of course, we know of the virtual chaos in India as a result of the intervention in a very dramatic and sudden fashion, not unlike what has happened here. But Madam Speaker, in the attempt to to bring some, having noticed only yesterday, Madam Speaker, to prepare for this debate, I did some research. And when there's an article entitled Demonetization in India, an Evaluation, from the Research Institute of Economics and Management, Southwestern University of Finance and Economics. And this is at page 2. India is not the only country to experience demonetization. You have a list of countries that had demonetization with objectives and after effect, other than India. Germany, 1923. The objective was to prevent inflation. Results, inflation fell. USA, 1969, to resist black money. It was successful. UK, 1971, to bring uniformity in currency. Successful in the UK, but failed in other countries. Ghana, 1982, to control black money. People turned to foreign currency. Myanmar, 1987, to resist black money, led to political dispute and thousands of people died. Nigeria, 1984, to fix debt burden and inflation-ridden economy collapsed. Zaire, 1990, to withdraw obsolescent currency from the system. It was successful. Former Soviet Union to fight against unearned income, smuggling, and corruption. The overall economic system eventually collapsed. Australia, 1996, to curb black money and improve security features on notes. It was successful. North Korea, 2010, to lower down the market of black money, miserably failed. Zimbabwe, 2010, to get rid from the black money and counterfeit currency. It failed. Pakistan, messed up. Philippines, 2016, to preserve the integrity of currency, yet to be known. Madam Speaker, so you see that the demonetization experience, notwithstanding that we have had that experience in Trinidad with the $50 bill, you will recall, Madam Speaker, that we had a $50 note, and then subsequently, when a container of $50 went missing, it was demonetized. And that therefore the $50 bill was only introduced during the People's Partnership Administration under Central Bank Jawala Rambaran with the polymer note. So that is what brought back the $50 bill. And it was a smooth transition to the $50. So that when you look at what is happening worldwide, you recognize that it is not all a good story. So what are the concerns we have here? The concerns as expressed by the Chambers of Commerce, the time period for implementation. Nobody is against bringing people within the tax stream. Nobody is against prevention of money laundering. But I will demonstrate later in my presentation, Madam Speaker, that to use this measure for money laundering really is not as effective because cash alone is not the money launderer's forte. The money launderer will go into real estate, into jewelry, into a series of areas in which cash alone is not the only focal point. And that has been the experience of India in its attempt to deal with the whole question of the demonetization of the 500 rupee and the 1,000 rupee. Madam Speaker, when you look at what is happening in Trinidad, the business groups indicate that during this period, why did you choose this period? Why? The business groups on $100 bill change, Daily Express, tough time to change. Gregory Aboud, Gabriel Faria, and then subsequently you have the Rajiv Dipti, I think it is, concern over short time to change over $100 notes. And they talk about the timing. And the minister in his presentation made no justification as to why you want to do that. Now, in this hectic period of the Yuletide season, it is a level of commercial activity that takes place. And unless there is some kind of period that allows the small businessmen to be able to get their deposits, in place and in time, then therefore this really will work against the business community in this period. So the timing is very important. The objective is a good objective, but the timing as to when you implement and when the time period runs from the specified notice period to the appointed date is very important. Madam Speaker, so because money, it is clear, is the lifeblood of any economic system. It facilitates the transactions, but if you want to tackle the whole question of money laundering, then you cannot only deal with the cash issue. Cannot. You have to deal with other things, Madam Speaker. So what we have had so far from the newspaper reports, the Minister of National Security is saying there is a criminal underbelly, we need to deal with it in cash. The Minister of Finance is saying we need to bring within the tax net, and I'm using my words, the formal and informal economy. The informal economy into the formal economy. And that there is, based on the initiative of the Minister of National Security, a criminal underbelly that is taking place in the society. Madam Speaker, in an article entitled "The Impact of Demonetization on the Indian Economy," written by the Department of Business, Sri Vasavi College, 2 professors. And at page 52, they deal with the principles of tackling what they call, what the minister refers to, black money in the newspaper article. And it says, principles of tackling black money. The first principle is that to remove the systemic pain that leads to creation of black money in the first place. Blames lies with the tax department. Black money is nothing but money generated in legitimate transactions which are hidden from the government so as to avoid paying the transaction cost, usually tax, in the legitimate economy. And this is usually done by using physical cash. The cash thereafter must be processed to convert into consumption or investment. Black economy refers to various activities, transactions that help process this physical cash, create returns on this cash, facilitate consumption using this cash, etc. Madam Speaker, in his contribution in the newspaper, the Honourable Member for Port of Spain North spoke about cash, the intelligence reports, providing the basis for cash to engage in illicit activities. So the funding mechanism is this $100 blue note. So you have a stash of blue note, and that stash is providing the basis for the funding of illicit activity. And this demonetization of that blue note, of our blue note currently, will provide the basis to solve that problem. Now, I don't know about the efficacy of that rationale. And really, I go back to the early point I made, provide the data. I'm not saying in fact, the member for Port said, bring the change on, bring the polymer on. But why now and why the haste now? Madam Speaker, and they go on to deal with the whole area, the systemic problem, and how you deal with this informal economy. So, Madam Speaker, when you look at this activity around this time, who are the winners? Who are the winners to engage in the demonetization in the utility season? The business community, the retail sector? They cannot be. They are the big losers in this. Hopefully, the criminal element will be a big loser too. But I will go on to show that in the Indian economy, when they demonetize the 500 rupee and the 1,000 rupee, that the amount of money that went into the system, laundering, they used the opportunity to take the cash and engage in the banking sector, and the demonetization of that became part of a legal scheme for laundering. I will go into that later on, Madam Speaker. But currently, when you look at what is happening here, the losers are the small businessmen, the business community, the old people, the elderly in the current climate. Because there's so much information we do not have in order to debate this. But who are the real winners in this? You know what the real winners? Hopefully the state will be, but in the immediate, the real winners are the banks. Because you have to go to the banks, the commercial bank, and I see the minister indicated that the commercial banks will be utilized in order to do the exchange, to do the deposit. So you can expect deposits may increase as a result of this influx that is now coming. Because given the criminality that is outside there in this particular time, it will be foolhardy for anyone to go with any significant sum of money, exchange it, and come out. They were better off depositing it. So then who is the real beneficiary? The banks. I think earlier on in his contribution, the Honourable Prime Minister spoke about the banks and the obscene profits that they're making. No, I use my language of the profits that they are making. Yeah, well, the Prime Minister spoke about the gargantuan profits that the banks are making. And in my language, it is the obscene profits of the bank. And what you have now is a continuation of that. So the real beneficiary are the real money launderers. Because the real beneficiary are the real money launderers. Because through the formal economy, you have major laundering taking place, Madam Speaker. So the banking sector will be negatively impacted, and that is the learning. That is the learning, that the banking sector. The learning also points to that the real estate sector will be in trouble, that it will dive. It depends on the time frame. Yeah, will dive. That is the learning. That has been the experience of other countries. You may have information otherwise, but that is the learning. And unless you provide data otherwise, then we cannot just take your word. Because the Honourable Minister, you're the same minister who said that you will be appointing thinking of appointing a special prosecutor to deal with the Cambridge Analytica issue, knowing fully well that the DPP is the criminal prosecutor in this country, and therefore there's no rule for a special prosecutor, Madam Speaker. The auto sector will also, the learning points to that the auto sector and the auto trade will suffer as a result because they are principally cash business. So all this point to the learning, Madam Speaker. And what has been the experience of the most recent country, India, in dealing with demonetization? In India, when the Reserve Bank of India did their report, you know what they found? They found, Madam Speaker, they found that 99% of the demonetized 501,000 rupees were deposited or exchanged for new currency. That figure suggests that most people, including corrupt officials, businessmen and criminals, said to have hoarded their illicit wealth in cash, have managed to preserve their fortunes. So if you go after that for the rationale that you suggest, this is what the learning says. The learning says that they took the money and they put it into the system, and the dirty money became clean through the system. That is what it said. Only point-something% was left outside. Minimalist. So as a mechanism for dealing with the crime underbelly, we are saying that this is not an appropriate mechanism by itself. Not an appropriate mechanism by itself, Madam Speaker. And so therefore the bank will be the beneficiaries. There are other areas in which you deal with that. And so the commercial banks will exchange. What the credit unions. Is there a role for the credit unions in this? The credit unions with the working class membership? And won't they be part of the deposit scheme in this country to allow for the exchange? Why have they been left out? I did not see that in the legislation. Why have they been left out, Madam Speaker? So that therefore, when you look at what, so I just want to know whether or not they well, all right, but you see, but you know, the minister in his presentation was parsimonious with the information. So that therefore we have to speculate as to what. So if there's a role for credit unions, I am happy with that. I am very happy with that. Madam Speaker, when you look at the legislation, you have a role, as my colleague indicated, that there is ministerial intervention, and that therefore he indicated that there are concerns as to the role of the minister. But I guess if you're going to tie in monetary policy with criminal, anti-criminal activity by the Ministry of National Security, there has to be a political input into that. But still, we must institutionally preserve the independence of the central bank. So the demonetization will take place on the appointed date, when the blue note, as we know it, will be replaced by the polymer note.
Member for Sugar, as your original speaking time is now spent, you're entitled to 15 more minutes to wind up your contribution.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I intend to utilize it. And there's, of course, the extension by the minister, the redemption and extension of the time period to Madam Speaker. But what the bank, and look at section 27A6, the bank, with the approval of the minister, may prescribe such conditions and procedures as it considered appropriate for the redemption of specified notes. So, what are these conditions that are going to apply? Why should we be making law in this parliament and giving the bank and the minister the right to make prescribed conditions to deal with people's money, and we have no knowledge? Yeah. It is an important point to make, that you ought to have a sense of the conditions under which you can retain this money. In the Indian experience, which is the most recent experience, they had to change as they went along because of the backlash that they got. So that, why don't we know? We are coming late in the dance. What are the conditions that the central bank is going to prescribe? The central bank cannot be like the Minister of National Security, hiding behind national security apron. We have to have an approach that the central bank has to be transparent and open for the benefit of the customers of the banking sector. Because at the end of the day, the customers must have the confidence in the banking sector in order for there to be that level of retention, Madam Speaker, of faith in the process. So then you go on some procedural matters. Now, in dealing with Section 3 of the amendment to the bill, Madam Speaker, I asked the minister when he was piloting, you are replacing 90,000. The 90,000 is a certain figure. If anybody could know that you cannot go with more than $90,000 in cash to deposit in your bank account. And so, therefore, Madam Speaker, there has to be some principle of certainty when you're dealing with these matters. Must have. And I cannot just leave it up to the minister to determine. It could be a yo-yo. Today 50, tomorrow 150. What it is. that you need. You need that certainty. Certainty is a principle of the rule of law. The subject must know how to fashion his behavior in order to go and meet that principle, meet that amount. So if you don't know, you're playing hit and miss. And what it is that is so, how can I put it, so national security conscious that we cannot know. When we know it is $90,000 today, that is the existing law. So, Madam Speaker, so the certainty, the legal certainty is required. And I am not buying into this, that it is up to the minister and we will get that amount as we go along. Law cannot be made on the basis of some amorphous and nebulous concept or quantity. It has to have certainty. That is such an accepted principle. You see, Madam Speaker, when you look at what has transpired in other areas of the world, you recognize that demonetization can assist in dealing with the criminal underbelly. Can. But the experience is that you cannot rely upon demonetization to carry this. And I am really fearful, first, of the indecent haste, the sense of urgency that has created almost an emergency. The Senate is, the other place is sitting tomorrow. Where is this? Where is this leading us? This haste, this sense of urgency really makes room for bad legislation. And there are too many gaps in the amendment provided for us. Too many gaps, too many nebulous, too many amorphous, too many uncertainties for us to just blindly support this legislation. And I want to suggest to the minister, especially the Minister for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, that you come to the legislation, you come to the parliament. There is no verifiable data for us. How is this going to impact? What are your projections? What you expect to come of it? How many gangs have been utilizing this stash of illicit cash? Madam Speaker, you know what a former central Reserve Bank of India said? To talk about people hiding money under their mattresses and pillows and in barrels is immature, because the real money laundering takes place in real estate, in gold, in jewelry, in paintings, and other areas. So unless the Honourable Minister comes and justifies that, for us to come with this visual graphic of a wall or a room full of money is nothing but an immature, infantile, going to the base elements. It is like, rum shop talk, for want of a better term. And as I say rum shop talk, it is the rum shops that will be affected by this. It is the rum shop, the bars, they deal in cash. They deal in cash in this matter, all the pubs, all the beverage areas, all the retail outlets. Well, my colleagues remind me of KFC. So, look, you need to provide this piece of legislation. The objective is good, but there are too many omissions, too much speculation for us to blindly support such a piece of legislation. And Madam Speaker, if you want to move and embrace the informal economy into the formal economy, I don't think this will give you the necessary oomph to achieve that. So, Madam Speaker, with these few words, I thank you very much.
Member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise at 9 to enter the debate and to provide information to the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago through you and through this House on a decision that was taken yesterday by the government of Trinidad and Tobago to deal with the demonetization of our largest note in circulation, which is the $100 note. I've listened attentively to my friend and colleague from Chaguanas West, as well as a member for Pointe-a-Pierre, to be in a position to be able to address their legitimate concerns where they exist, but also to provide the necessary information that can be provided at this stage. I have to start by saying that I found it like a bit of a fishing expedition by my friend. He kept throwing the bait. You have to justify, you have to tell us, you can't hide behind national security. That may work with someone else and in another place. To say that you must come here with statistical evidence and you must lay it out nakedly and all to bear as to who is engaging in what and why you want to do this. As was stated very clearly yesterday, this particular measure is being done, and there is not a single law-abiding citizen in Trinidad and Tobago who would oppose it. And in fact, the member for Pointe-a-Pierre started off by saying, and even quoting and saying that the leader of the opposition supports the principle and the legislation. So I'll start off once again, Madam Speaker, by stating this particular measure is being implemented in order to fight money laundering, including the financing of drugs, narcotics, and the illegal firearm trade. Pause. A lot of time was spent in the last contribution talking about money laundering and how money laundering is conducted. It's not only conducted in cash, it's conducted in real estate and jewelry, etc. Obviously. That this can't be the only measure taken to combat money laundering. Who said it's the only measure? To say that would be to mislead the population. In fact, right here, not too long ago, we passed what I believe is groundbreaking legislation in the form of Explain Your Wealth. That goes to the heart of money laundering. But as we've said time and time again, there's not a single measure that you can take that will just eradicate all crime, and in particular the crime of money laundering. What I found interesting is the continued harping on real estate, on real estate, on real estate. This is going to stop real estate sales. So let me just, through you, Madam Speaker, put this in context. All we are doing today is we are amending the Central Bank Act to provide the opportunity and the discretion to allow the demonetization, which means to take out of legal circulation, to say that bill is no longer legal tender, from a notice period of 3 months to now a minimum of 14 days. That is what the legislation is. And I'll get into the bill to explain why certain provisions are there and the safeguards that are there in those provisions. So what I find astounding are the harping on and the focusing on the purchase of real estate is I am asking every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago today, and in particular the law-abiding citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, who goes and purchases million-dollar properties in cash? Who goes and purchases million-dollar properties in cash? And how the changing of an old bill to a new polymer bill will collapse the real estate. So I sat there and I listened carefully, and the continuous reference to real estate and the collapse of real estate, and I wondered, and I smiled. Who is it? Which legitimate businessman keeps millions and millions of dollars in their possession to purchase real estate? That is an interesting proposition. Again, tell us who is engaged in illegal and illicit activity. Why come with this? And this typical attempt to create a sense of panic and create a sense of frenzy as to why now and why the timing. I'll get to the timing. But again, I smiled. Because I asked my friend from Chaguanas West, as I just said, this is being done partially to combat the financing of drugs, narcotics, and the illegal firearm trade. That is a cash industry. those transactions, as far as I am aware, are conducted in cash. So I want to ask my friend for Shogunas West, who are the drug dealers that he knows that will take a Lynx card, a credit card, or a check? Because the whole, and I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Let me retract the whole. Let me say 99% of those who engage in that type of activity, it is in cash. It is in cash. The people who go and engage in the illegal activity, not the purchasing from the suppliers from South America or where else it will be, because yes, that might be US dollars. The domestic trading in illegal firearms, the domestic trading and carrying out of the illicit drugs, the cocaine, all of the other things that are hurting our law-abiding citizens. Every sensible person in Trinidad knows that is a cash industry. That is not a Lynx card. That is not I'll write you a check for the cocaine. That is not take my credit card and go and swipe it in the machine. So again, that is trying to lead the population down a specific rabbit hole. And this member, that is me, I'm not falling for that. The other things that this will deal with is the black money economy. Or as my colleague from Diego Martin, he said, that whole illicit economy, that economy where it is, that dirty money economy. It also will deal with corruption. Because again, and I say at the outside, it is recognized by the government because a lot of planning went into this, a lot of consultation with the experts who've gone through this before. And I'll get to the India example in a short while. There are legitimate businesses that will be transacting, carrying a lot of transactions out in cash. No doubt about that. Every law-abiding citizen, be assured that once you're carrying out your businesses above board and in accordance with the law, you have nothing to fear. This is a simple exercise. Bring your old note, walk out with a new note. Bring your old notes, deposit it. When you're ready to withdraw your cash, withdraw it with new notes. The new note, as we've stated, as the member for Point Bay pointed out some of the features, a decision was also taken to upgrade from paper money that has less of a shelf life and less security features to polymer. Immediately by going to polymer, you've provided a security feature. The new note will have additional security features that paper can't have. You want facts with the counterfeiting side? Up to recently, we cracked a ring, meaning the law enforcement officers, where persons were bleaching $1 paper notes and then reprinting it as blue notes, as you call it. You can't do that very easily with polymer and the security features. Whilst we're upgrading our currency, we decided to deal with the differently abled, and in particular, the visually impaired. So the new tender, the new note, will have braille on it for them easy to identify. And other related problems with respect to corruption. I was talking about legitimate businessmen. So there will be some businesses, Massey stores, the whole chain of Massey stores and other things that may be dealing in cash. All you have to do is take in your old notes, exchange them for the new notes. Simple. No need for panic. It's been planned. We've been working on it. The security forces have been working on it. As Minister Imbert, the Minister of Finance, said, we've met with the banking sector. Now, the real reason behind this is a national security reason, as we stated yesterday. The government has accepted that for national security reasons, we should change the note. It will completely defeat the purpose of what you're trying to achieve, to come and say, well, we intend to change the note. We'll change it down the road. We'll change it next year. Takes me to the point of convenience and timing, because I expected it. I expected the noise about timing, because people have a legitimate right to have concerns. I understand, and the government understands, there will be some level of anxiety by pensioners, as I mentioned, and other people. That is why we meet with the banks and tell the banks you have to cater. You made a point, member for Shogunas West, and you talk about who will benefit, who will be the real beneficiary. and the suggestion that the banks will be, well, I will be very surprised. Because the banks now have to incur additional cost and expense to be able to implement this. Because they have to be the ones carrying this out. It's not going to be any of us carrying it out. And this is a perfect opportunity to put down a marker. Government decides policy, and other people implement. The government has taken a decision to change the note for reasons, some of which I'll touch on. The implementer and the administrator of this decision is the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. And the legislation, the majority that we're looking at here today, the amendment to the Central Bank Act and the introduction of 27A, wherever you see bank referred to there, it is the central bank. So the central bank must carry this out, this policy decision of the government. It is not the government. The credit unions, so when you said, are credit unions left out, the answer is no. Because the reference to the banks is not the reference to commercial banks. It's the central bank. Credit unions, like all of us, credit unions, like the banks, bring in your existing notes, you will be provided with replacement notes. And therefore, they would in turn be able to provide their shareholders, as you know, that's how the cooperative society credit unions work, their shareholders and their membership with their deposits. So no need for scare there. Same thing with the pensioners. We've told the banks you have to increase your resources over the period of time. The central bank has by now put out there, because as I said, they're the administrators, they're the implementers. They've put out there, this is what the new note will look like. We are busy working now to ensure that the commercial banks get the notes. I put down a marker here as well, because one of the things that went wrong in India was there were not sufficient notes. Not sufficient notes to replace. Again, we in Trinidad are not a backward people. In the sitting down and the planning and for the implementation of this, as I said, we met with the experts, the international experts. We discussed things, and we will learn from the mistakes that others were made. So I give the population the assurance that the replacement notes for the existing notes in circulation are available and will be available. So we're not going to have that problem. Let me just touch on the India example. It's a convenient point, and I expected it. In India, in 2016, the Prime Minister got up, or the government got up, and announced on the 8th of November, if I remember the date correct, yeah. It was Moody. 8th of November, as of today, the 8th of November, demonetization. No longer legal tender. So make your way to the bank. First difference. We're not doing that. You're asking about dates, I'll get to that in a short while. But the second point is, and let's be real, India in 2017 had a population of 1.339 billion people. 1.339 billion compared to 1.3 million. Incomparable. So what you then do is you look for a jurisdiction similar to us that has recently gone through this exercise, Mauritius. And Mauritius has a similar composition to Trinidad and Tobago. Population almost identical, but also, and economy to an extent, but also similar to our racial composition or ethnic composition or religious composition, etc. And that is how we went about doing this. So yes, you look at the India, you look at the others, Venezuela across the waters, and the others. We are not in a similar position to them. And what they did in India was they took their two largest bills, the 500 and the 1,000, change it out, introduce a 2,000. We are just focusing on our largest denominator bill. There is absolutely, Madam Speaker, no need for any sense of anxiety, any sense of panic whatsoever. The dates. You cannot come and present the dates today. I can't come and present the dates tomorrow either. The legislation doesn't exist. You can't preempt the legislation. We have to pass the legislation. This thing has to be done very, very carefully, very, very sequentially. Everything, even the announcement yesterday, The governor of the central bank then, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, telling the population this is what it would look like. Our job is to come to Parliament and pass legislation. Yes, we want Parliament sitting now, which is why we're all here, we're conscientious, and tomorrow there'll be a short sitting, hopefully, in the Senate. Once the legislation is passed, the administrator and the implementer of this policy decision will then tell the population what is the proposed dates by the bank, meaning the central bank. The central bank has stated at this stage, with the introduction of the new bills, there will be co-circulation. Co-circulation means the existing bills, i.e. the old bills, and the new bills continue to be legal tender, continue to be acceptable for business, for trade, everything, until the date of demonetization. And in the proposed legislation, we call that the appointed date. Let's just turn very briefly to the legislation itself. Simple legislation, but important legislation. All we're doing is we're seeking to insert now a 27A, a new 27A. Because when you look at the existing Central Bank Act, and I draw your attention, and for those who down the road may want to look at the interpretation of the legislation, what we the legislators intend, start with Section 21 of the Act. Section 21 of the Central Bank Act talks about Section 21(1), the currency of Trinidad and Tobago are the notes and coins issued by the bank under this Act. So at the outset, it is telling us, and we all know it in here, that the central bank is the one who will issue the notes. Then at subsection 2, it talks about, the bank has the sole right, this is the central bank, to issue notes and coins in Trinidad and Tobago. Such notes and coins are legal tender. Right? And then it goes on. But when you go to Section 27, the existing Section 27, Section 27(1), the bank, with the approval of the minister, may, on giving 3 months' notice, publish in the Gazette, call in any of its coins, notes, and it goes on. That 3-month period is the current existing law that says within 3 months, once you give 3 months' notice, you can demonetize. Yes. This is an exercise that the government took a decision on based on national security issues. The national security issues are to combat and to fight those engaged in illegal activity. The drug dealers, the ones engaged in human trafficking. Let's not bury our head in the sand. You could ask Couva North. Couva North has stated publicly that there is criminal activity going on in the constituency. We all know it. We all know the bars, the clubs, you call it the rum shop. I'm not referring to the rum shops. We all know the bars and the clubs and the others that now are engaging in human trafficking and illegal prostitution and the use and abuse of women. The men going in there using credit cards, they're using checks, they're not using that type of thing. It is a cash economy. The real ones behind organized crime are dealing in cash. They're hoarding the cash, they're storing the cash to then use that to further the illicit activity. So today, with the passage of this, we shorten and compress the time to a minimum of 14 days. And as we go through the legislation, you will see where there's safeguards and protection. So the legitimate questions were asked. What about people who, for example, and I've gotten the questions asked, they reside outside of Trinidad and Tobago, but annually they come. We all have them, family members who would come for summer, those who would come for carnival, etc. But they have their TT cash. What do they do with their $100 bills now? It's provided for here. And we will deal with that. The central bank will publish, as we have planned, they've sat down carefully and planned for these instances. A person who's ill, a person who's unable to get to the bank within that period of time. Categories of people will be identified, and the provisions are here in this amendment to cater for the unexpected instances and the expected, because as we can stand here now and talk about persons who are outside coming back in, walking with their money. So they come in for carnival next year, they come in for Christmas next year, whenever it is. Right? What people? We deal with them differently. All right? So what we're doing is we're coming here with an amendment to deal with and to give the ability, because the legal advice was you don't go under the existing 27. Make sure that we close those issues. Make sure and deal with the specific. Give the express power to demonetize. And that is all that 27 is. Try and provide for the safeguards, that the bank has to consult with the minister has to give the order, and if it is felt that the date, the appointed date, is not a sufficient one, as the legislation currently is, it doesn't provide for the opportunity to extend the date. What we're proposing here does, because again, in life they're unplanned, unforced, and these types of things you have to be able to prepare for, but you don't know what is coming. And that is what the legislation is here about. So 27A1, in addition to the powers of the bank under Section 27, the minister may direct the bank to cancel any note issued by it giving not less than 14 days. So it's not less than 14. So you can't do it willy-nilly overnight and disrupt the whole place. But the notice must be published giving the date of cancellation. 2, subsection 2. On or from the appointed date, the specified notes shall cease to be the currency of or be legal tender. Because when you're conducting these types of exercises, which is going after illegal and corrupt activity, and you want to demonetize, make it express. So no one can come and argue afterwards, well, I could still use my old $100 bill. No, we're seeing very clearly, so anyone looking at it, know that from the appointed date, you can't use it anymore. So go to the bank, change it out. The central bank will give the instructions to the banking community as to how it can be. We have identified different categories that people fall into, meaning there are some who are massive cash businesses. There are some of us and some of the pensioners, etc., will have smaller amounts. There's some who may have in-between amounts. But once you're law abiding, you just go, you explain. It exists now. All of us in here are subject to PEP. We're all politically exposed people. So go now and try to deposit at $200, you have to fill out a form. That is how it is. So what we're seeing is, in the second part of this legislation I'll come to, give us the opportunity to look at the 90,000, to either increase it or to reduce it. It's not going to be secret, because you have to tell the world. And all it means now is explain your money. Fill out a source of funds. Say where the $10,000 came from, and you're good to go. But don't underestimate our banking system. They already know the doctor that comes, because every month for the last 20 years of his or her life, they've been depositing X amount of money. That is the KYC, know your customer. It exists in the banking system. No need for panic. Subsection 3, the bank shall redeem at face value. So we're making sure that people understand, and the central bank, and we all understand, your $100, you're getting $100. The value of your $100 old note, you're getting a new value, a new note at the same value, $100. Subsection 4, the bank shall redeem at face value any of the specified notes that are presented within the period of 3 months after the appointed date. So this is the section that captures the categories of people we were just discussing. So after the appointed date expires, there's an automatic 3-month period, according to this legislation, to start, so it protects anybody who falls out of the period. And that resulted that, so you couldn't put in your money or change your money, present your notes for redemption prior to the appointed date, and that resulted from circumstances beyond the control of the true owner of the notes, or that there was some other good or sufficient reason for the failure. We don't stop there, but we provide for it expressly in the law to ensure that people are protected. Subsection 5, the minister may by order extend either of the dates, extend the dates of period in subsections 1 and 4. Subsection 1 is the original date, the original appointed date, that's the demonetization date. So it's not a drop dead. At the end of the day, we will have the ability to extend as you see how things are going. But, and I warn the population, don't think it will be exercised, because understand this exercise, it will be exercised at discretion, because understand the purpose of this is we're going after those engaged in criminal and corrupt activity. You don't want them to fall in. You're hearing it all. You're seeing it everywhere. I'm being messaged. You're seeing it on social media. Everybody's speculating. Well, they'll find the loophole. They'll do this. They'll do that. Again, don't think that people are stupid, especially the law enforcement and those in charge. Has nothing to do with us. Our job is to pass the legislation. The government has done its part. This is a policy. Central bank implement. Other people, you have your jobs to do. So the minister can extend either of those two dates. And minister, of course, would mean, as the Constitution states, the cabinet. So it's not the Minister of Finance wake up one morning and just decide to do something. It has to be a cabinet decision, Madam Speaker. Subsection 6, the bank with the approval of the minister may prescribe such conditions. And that is what will capture it. So they will spell out to us, these are the conditions, these are the areas, this is how to deal with it. Subsection 7, and well, 8 is the definition. That, in a nutshell, Madam Speaker, is a simple amendment being made, but the effective amendment, and one that we've ensured protects the rights of every law-abiding citizen. We didn't try to go under, well, let's just scratch 3 months, bring it to minimum. No. We sought advice, and we were told, make sure you have protection. Make sure you have express provision of the powers to do what it is you want the central bank to be able to do. Then the Proceeds of Crime Act is being amended. That falls to the Minister of National Security. That will be published. People will know. I was trying to remember, and I was asking the Attorney General. I think my recollection when that legislation came in, it was something like $45,000. So once you went into the bank to deposit over $45,000, including by check, you have to fill out a source of funds. Correct? Correct. And then it went up to 60, and then it's 90. So give us the opportunity to look at it, especially with this type of legislation, and to be reasonable and to bring it to whatever level it needs to be, to fit in, to marry with what we're trying to achieve. Just very briefly, Madam Speaker, some of the issues that have been raised in the public domain that deserve to be addressed, raised by my friends here. Timing. Timing would never be convenient. People talking about Christmas now, I guarantee if you went, they would then talk about Carnival, people coming for Carnival. After that is Easter, after that is, well, summer vacation, etc. You just have to take a decisive decision, make sure you protect people's rights, and just do it. And that is what we're doing. Inconvenience. Yes, there will be inconvenience. It by definition is going to be inconvenient for persons. Apologize for that up front. But the greater good outweighs the inconvenience. Understand the real people that we're going after. None of the law-abiding citizens, those who want to engage in the criminal activity, they deserve to have to deal with this type of measure and the implementation. Whenever the state and law enforcement implement measures and their operations to tackle crime, there will always be some level of inconvenience. But we say this is for the betterment of society. It was interesting as it was announced yesterday, and people start to comment and people start to write and people start to message and communicate. A large part of the business community, and I wouldn't talk about water cooler talk that may have taken place. My colleague has already done that. But a large part of the business community actually believes that this measure at this time will provide a stimulation of the economy. And by definition, it will. Because persons who want to spend now their cash and get it out, they will now push it into the economy. I just put that on the table. When you look at the same India example, and you look at the benefits and the disadvantages, it tells you about that being one of the benefits. And we go straight to benefits. This is an effective way to curb black money economy, corruption, and counterfeiting. It will completely deal with the counterfeiting issues that we're dealing with right now. All law-abiding citizens, Madam Speaker, who are not involved in malpractice will welcome and have begun to welcome this as a good move. It forces unaccounted cash into an accountable system. And there's a big part of it. What we've been talking about and discussing, and from the national security perspective, is all of that unaccountable cash out there. And you see it, you see the viral videos. But we also know it exists, and the evidence is when we do the raids, when they make the pickups. You could also assist in having citizens open bank accounts and depositing their money. That's a safety issue as well. It also, the banks see this as a step towards a cashless society. Banks all over the world want to go that way, whether we want to or not. But it does provide some impetus towards that. So what I say, Madam Speaker, is for every law-abiding citizen, this is a simple exchange. Bring in your old notes, get your new notes. Government has been planning, including with our security services.
Member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, your original speaking time is now spent. You have 15 minutes to wind up your presentation.
Right? So we will provide the support that we can. We've met and spoken to the bank security personnel as well, and we have an awareness around that. This will be implemented and is to be implemented by the central bank and administered. We've taken a policy decision. We're coming here for the passage of this act. It's then up to them to implement it and make sure it's properly implemented. Money remains in core circulation until it's demonetized. The central bank will tell us when that will be. Madam Speaker, with those words, I hope and I trust that I've provided another level of clarity as to why this government decision was taken, and we look forward to the support of all, and in particular all of the law-abiding citizens, because that's our job. Our job here, as I've said before, as the legislators, is to pass legislation to support a lawful society. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Member for San Fernando West.
Madam Speaker, I don't propose to be too long. I just propose to supplement some of what my learned colleagues have said and to address a few very important issues that are in the public domain. Madam President, Madam Speaker, forgive me, Madam Speaker, the demonetization has been put into the context of what is required here today. The amendment to the Central Bank Act, the member for Chaguanas West asked why was there, forgive me if it was Pointe-a-Pierre or Chaguanas West, perhaps it was Pointe-a-Pierre, said that this was something which was going to erode the powers of the central bank under Section 27. I believe it was Pointe-a-Pierre. And I'd just like to correct that, please, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Central Bank Act is being proposed to be amended because we're ultimately dealing with the entity that can treat with the issuance of money, the demonetization of money, the call-in of money and replacement, the general management. Sections 21 onward of the Central Bank Act is where we have the power for the central bank to actually issue money and coins. Section 27 of the Central Bank Act is a very limited section. That section allows for call-in of money. It is a call-in and management of money in a very unique context. That call-in and management of money is that the bank may, with approval of minister, give 3 months' notice, call in any of its notes on payment of face value, any such notes, etc., on expiration cease to be legal tender. This law, as we propose to be amended by the insertion of a Section 27A, is something which is beyond that power. Our bill specifically, and it's important to speak to this because I want to address the constitutionality of the law. It's something that we haven't yet touched upon, but it's imperative to put upon the record. The power that we offer the central bank in Section 27A is a different power. It is in addition to the power in Section 27. It's that power to effectively cause a cancellation, a demonetizing, as they call it, of the legitimate currency. And, Madam Speaker, very importantly, it preserves the value of the property in special circumstances where the procedure is to be prescribed. Now, I've said it that way because I want to put the issue of constitutionality on the record, because other jurisdictions have seen challenges to the constitutionality of laws such like this. If you look in particular to the experience in India, where there have been 3 demonetization cycles, there was significant challenge in the Indian courts. Number one, it is axiomatic that money is property. It is also axiomatic that if you're seeking to treat with the removal of money, that you're going to treat with equality of treatment. Therefore, the constitutional parameters which jump out at us are sections 4A, 4C, 4B, and 4D. 4A, 4B, 4D. 4A is your right to property. 4B effectively is your equality of treatment, and 4D is your treatment, again, equality as to how you manage it in the other context of the forum where you are treated. Madam Speaker, therefore, it is going to be said that this law trips fundamental rights. And somebody out there is going to ask the question as to whether we need a 3/5 majority to actually cause this law to come into existence. And let me address that. It's important to put it on the record. The issue of proportionality in this law is first of all to be grounded on whether every Section 4 right of the Constitution, enshrined right, needs to be derogated from or managed downward, affected by a Section 13 or 3/5 majority treatment. It is now simple law that not every Section 4 and 5 right needs to be treated with a Section 13 majority. That has been set out in the very famous case of Surat, in lots of local judgments, which have reaffirmed that position effectively, Baroness Hale's dicta. Second point, the legitimacy of this law is to be found in its legitimate aim. And the member for Port of Spain North, St. Anne's West, set out the legitimacy of the aim. It is to treat with national security. Let me add further that the legitimate aim is to be found in Trinidad and Tobago's assessment, because Chaguanas West asked for data, and I'm bound to put the data on the record. In putting the data as to whether there is a risk, what is the national security risk, I must put on the record that information which comes from the Financial Intelligence Unit. The first thing that I need to put on the record, Madam President, is that, Madam Speaker, forgive me, I was in the Senate just 2 days ago. Madam Speaker, the first thing that I must put on the record is that we have a suite of laws that treat with the scourge of illicit money, corruption, money laundering, terrorist financing, proliferation financing. That is to be found, Proceeds of Crime Act, Anti-Terrorism Act, Financial Intelligence Unit Act, Financial Obligations Regulations, Financial Intelligence Unit of Trinidad and Tobago Regulations, and the Financial Obligations Financing of Terrorism Regulations 2011. Those 6 pieces of law, Madam Speaker, have allowed us to capture data. And Chaguanas West asked for the data, and I want to specifically, for the purposes of Hansard and for challenge, put out the FIU annual report of 2017, in particular at page 21, and I'd also like to put out the FIU report of 2018, its annual report, to be found at pages 22 and 23. In treating with these 2 things, let me put on record. The 2017 report demonstrates that there were total number of suspicious transaction reports, suspicious activity reports, 877. And that 877 represented, Madam Speaker, $14 billion odd, nearly $15 billion in the banking sector alone. There was another $7 billion in the insurance sector, $44 million in the investment companies, $12 million in the cooperative societies, $18 million in money transfer services like Western Union and Grace Kennedy. And Madam Speaker, that is to also be found across the template in everything from banking, money laundering, seen in jewelers, motor vehicle sales, national lotteries, real estate, private members clubs. For the benefit of Hansard as well, let me put on record that the 2018 annual report demonstrates $22.5 billion in suspicious transactions and suspicious activities. Let me repeat that, $22.5 billion. In motor vehicle sales, 12 million. In money transfer services, 10 million. Attorneys at law, $142 million. In national lotteries, 1 million odd. In private members clubs, 147 million, etc. When we look at the management of these suspicious transactions, we hit that first point of, is there a legitimate aim in this law? the legitimate aim is to be found here. Madam Speaker, I heard a public commentator allege that this is a good law, but allege that Trinidad and Tobago has had no examples of success when we treat with the scourge of money laundering. On the radio, very bold, very loud, sounding as if this person knew everything. Yes, this government hasn't treated with the scourge of corruption and money laundering. Trinidad and Tobago has had laws since 2009. The person said that person was there when those laws came in. And then the person went on to make the assertion, the very bold assertion, that there was absolutely no matters before the court or convictions. Madam Speaker, a man said not a single one. I want to tell you, in the period 2015 to 2019, under our tenure, 66 persons charged for money laundering, 1,416 charges for money laundering, 4 pleadings guilt, 4 identified as being beneficial owners of companies used in commissions of fraud offenses. 1,416 charges were a resultant value of $59.7 million of worth of charges and $1.3 million worth of US dollars in charges. Madam Speaker, it is astounding that people can just step forward and say that nothing has been done. So the legitimate aim, the first limb of proportionality, we are treating with money laundering, corruption, the financing of terrorism, and the fact that we have seen as a result of improved intelligence in the SSA, improved activity by the Commissioner of Police, vigorous national security work, the Financial Intelligence Unit having been supplemented by the Ministry of Finance, the Attorney General's Office having implemented umpteen laws and birthed the National Anti-Money Laundering Committee as a creature of law where the AG manages that aspect. We can tell you that there is legitimate aim and there is certain statistical information. Trafficking in persons, prostitution of minors, corruption in land, etc. Now, Madam Speaker, Chaguanas West was very correct. Chaguanas West said, look, he didn't think that treating with demonetization, changing out the $100 bill, was something that could just do it. And he went to different jurisdictions. Madam Speaker, I'm somewhat astounded that my colleague would say that, but perhaps he's forgotten the last 4 years of work that we put in this Parliament. Madam Speaker, let me put it on record right now. We have, as a government, certainly not put our eggs in one basket. The Minister of National Security said that a decision was taken at Cabinet this week. I'd like to say a decision was taken over 2 years ago by the head of the National Security Council, the Honourable Prime Minister, to put this into effect. The Minister of National Security has said today and informed the public that we have avoided some of the mistakes made in India, for instance, where they announced the demonetization and did not have the cash in hand to replace it. We obviously are in a position where we have the cash on hand. In other words then, the head of the National Security Council, the Honourable Prime Minister, ensured that this mechanism was worked out over 2 years. But I want to put it in context for Chaguanas West. Madam Speaker, we have sought to put our eggs in the following baskets. We have treated with laws to manage all of the areas where you can put illicit financing. Land, companies, and cash. Land, Madam Speaker. We did, of course, the entire land package. We did the 4 laws, the Registration of Title to Land Act, the Land Adjudication Act, the amendments to the Land Tribunal, the position of the state lands position. In relation to land, we have 2 more bills to come forward in a matter of a week. That is the Real Estate Agents Bill and the Registration of Deeds and Miscellaneous Provisions legislation. Madam Speaker, perhaps my friend Chaguanas West does not yet remember the Anti-Terrorism Act, the Financial Intelligence Unit, the Proceeds of Crime Act, the Mutual Assistance in Criminal Matters Act, the amendments to the Companies Act to treat with beneficial ownership, the amendments to introduce non-profit organization management, the amendments to treat with cash as we dealt with the financial obligation regulations. My friend perhaps does not also remember that we went and we removed bearer share certificates, beneficial ownership in 2 different ways under the securities legislation. You see, Madam Speaker, we did those laws to capture land, cash, and companies so that we can get all of the areas where corruption can be fed into. So we are certainly not putting our basket to catch one aspect of it alone. It's a broad section approach. Madam Speaker, that is to be layered by the mechanisms that we have used to catch the illicit crime. Obviously, the civil asset forfeiture, explain your wealth legislation. Obviously, the criminal offenses that we have brought in apply on that. We have done with that in the anti-gang legislation as well. Second limb of proportionality. Is this measure rationally connected to that legitimate aim? Obviously, targeting the money in the fashion that we do to remove the highest note of currency is rationally connected. The third limb of proportionality, do we go any further than we ought to go? Have we been excessive? In traversing the elements of proportionality, I will say this. Number one, we say, as the Honourable Minister of National Security said, we are demonetizing. There will be a date after which this is no longer legal currency. Number two, we provide for the exchange on face value, meaning $100 is $100. Number three, we provide for the exceptions to the rule. You are out of the country, you are sick, you have legitimate cause, you knock on the door of the bank, which is the central bank. Madam Speaker, let me put this on the record. There are 80 million $100 notes in circulation. Let me repeat that. 80 million notes in circulation. That translates to $8 billion in circulation. That is to be found, Madam Speaker, not in just people's mattresses, not in their hands, but in the following places. Number one, there are, of course, list of banks. Trinidad and Tobago has 8 banks. Bank of Baroda, Trinidad and Tobago Limited. Citibank, Trinidad and Tobago Limited. First Caribbean International Bank, Trinidad and Tobago Limited. First Citizens Bank Limited. JMMB Bank, Trinidad and Tobago Limited. RBC Royal Bank, Trinidad and Tobago Limited. Republic Bank, Bank, Trinidad and Tobago Limited. It is to be found in 16 non-banks. Answer Merchant, Caribbean Finance, Citicorp, Development Finance Limited, Fidelity Finance, FCB Depository Services, First Citizens Trustees, Guardian Group, JMMB, Express Finance, Island Finance, Massey Finance, NCB Global, RBC Investment, RBC Merchant, RBC Trust, Scotiabank. It is to also be found, Madam Speaker, in money value transfer services. There are 10 of them in current active position. Chad & Geller, Earthpoint, Grace Kennedy, Kingdom Brothers, Laparkan, Massey, Pennywise, Think Mobile, Unilog, WePay. That is to be found also in 120 credit unions. So, we know the list. We understand this. You have, I wouldn't do like my friend, the Honourable Tim Gopi Singh, member for Caroni East. I wouldn't call them out, because in his list, some are fabricated and mine are all real. But Madam Speaker, what I can say, across those hundreds of entities, obviously the $8 billion, a large part, if not most of it, is in there. So let's take away the fear and concern. Obviously, the easiest path is to go and take the money, which is here, go to these financial institutions, non-banks, money transfer services, and credit unions, replace the billions of dollars that they will have there, and then what we're looking for is the rest of it that is in the public hand. Madam Speaker, that therefore takes away the large chunk of fear in this equation. Obviously, the position is now left, and legitimately so the concern has been expressed, can you manage the flow? The Minister of National Security has already said that the central bank will be managing this flow. We have applied the exceptions to the rule. We have mapped out the logistics inside of the equation, Madam Speaker, and therefore it is imperative for us to say, in answer to that question, yes, it is to be managed carefully. Yes, we expect it to go well. Do we think that there won't be hiccups? Obviously not. That's why you'll see in this bill the ability for the Minister of Finance in feeding the proportionality of this bill to amend the time frame in 27A1 and 27A3 to such further time as may be necessary. Madam Speaker, that in essence treats with the proportionality argument, the constitutional argument. All that is left to be said right now, Madam Speaker, is that I want to remind Trinidad and Tobago is the first country in the world, one of the first countries in the world to have undergone our fourth round mutual evaluation in the Financial Action Task Force. We were the first in the Caribbean Financial Action Task Force. We failed dismally in 2015. We were put into the international review grouping in the ICRG process in FATF and in the enhanced follow-up in CFATF. We are going to be examined by the FATF in person on the 6th and 7th of January. They are coming to Trinidad and Tobago. They are going to attend upon us. They're going to interview our institutions, and they are going to check whether we have done what we have done. Madam Speaker, I can tell you now, without breaching the rules, we have done exceptionally well on our progress. Trinidad and Tobago has come in for tremendous praise for the work that we have done. We are being hailed as a country where tackling crime and corruption has been approached right. I can tell you, Madam Speaker, that there are certain landmark judgments which will be delivered shortly in relation to some of the work that we have done. I can't go too far into that just yet, but what I can tell you, Madam Speaker, is that it is by no mistake that we amended 23 pieces of law to actually take ourselves to where we want to get to. 23 pieces of law which take us across all of the matters which coincide with this bill. This particular legislation, Madam Speaker, is one of the last pieces of the puzzle in creating this matrix, in managing to take the profit out of crime. We are doing what other countries have done well. Last point that I'll make. The recommendation for the establishment of the limits, because we propose amendments to the Proceeds of Crime Act and also for the FORs, the Financial Obligation Regulations. The Proceeds of Crime Act says that large transactions are established at $90,000 or such other sum as may be effectively prescribed. What we have done is we have eliminated the $90,000, leaving the tail end of it. It was always allowed to be amended because, Madam Speaker, other jurisdictions have different limits. I'd like to just simply say this. In the United Kingdom, every single transaction which is over 1,000 euro, 1,000 euro effectively, Madam Speaker, is about 7,000 TT dollars. Everybody with $7,000 has to do a declaration. All politically exposed people have to do declarations. I'll confess now, my own child at university, in her first time, cannot open a bank account in the United Kingdom because her father is a politically exposed person and Trinidad and Tobago is on the FATF listing. I am personally affected by that. She, therefore, cannot even get a telephone because you have to have a bank phone, a bank account to get a telephone. This thing is not just any and everybody. All of us are in this particular basket. What I can tell you, Madam Speaker, in relation to the FOR limits, the POCA limits, the proceeds of crime limits, there are different limits for different categories. Perhaps my friends don't know, if you are in a private members club, a casino effectively, the limit is $18,000. If you are in a one-off transaction for wire transfers of monies at Grace Kennedy, etc., the limit is $6,000. If you are treating with life insurance, annual premiums, $6,000. If you're dealing with single premiums, $15,000. So the financial obligation regulations, and those are to be found in sections 11.1a and 14.1d of those FORs, there are different limits for different quantities. What I can tell you, Madam Speaker, is that this is a time for all of us to want to get it done. One of the consequences, I think Minister Young put it carefully, the Minister of National Security, is that obviously those who are sitting on large quantities of cash will have to spend or bring in their cash. If they are going to spend that cash, it is obvious that we're about to see an uptick in the economy. It is obvious that the Minister of National Security and the security agencies will blanket Trinidad and Tobago, as they do, in ensuring that there is safety and law and order in this exercise. We should celebrate this decision. If there are hiccups along the way, we should try to iron them out. And having put the constitutional measures in place on this record, Madam Speaker, I thank you for this opportunity to contribute.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank honourable members for allowing us to conclude this debate at a reasonable time. Madam Speaker, I would just like to put into the record some findings of a commission of inquiry into drug trafficking dated July 2018, and this was in the island of Mauritius, which the member for Port of Spain North and St. Anne's West has referred to. And what was interesting in the report of the Commission of Inquiry on Drug Trafficking, July 2018, in the island of Mauritius, this is what the Commission had to say. Since notorious drug traffickers are known to have amassed a fortune and are being looked after by their accomplices or members of their family who are instructed to pay counsel, purchase property, movables or immovables, the only way is to hit at their pockets. And this is a recommendation I want to repeat of a Commission of Inquiry on Drug Trafficking in Mauritius. The Commission recommends the government seriously consider to issue a new generation of banknotes in replacement of the current series, especially those of high denomination. So one of the findings of a Commission of Inquiry on Drug Trafficking in Mauritius just a year and a half ago was that one of the ways that you hit drug traffickers in their pocket is that you issue a new series of banknotes. I can also tell you, Madam Speaker, that in Mauritius, there has been demonetization on a number of occasions. The government of Mauritius in the year 1998 completely changed its currency. Now, it did not change its currency because of, at that time, a desire to deal with dirty money. It changed its currency because there was a misprint with respect to the Tamil script on the banknote. So the matter actually went to court. It's very curious. In 1998, in Mauritius, some persons took the government to court with respect to the banknote because of the way the Tamil script was printed on the banknote. There were objections. And the court ordered the government to change the entire family of notes. So they changed all. And what I can read to you what happened in Mauritius in 1998. In 1998, in Mauritius, and I'm reading from the Mauritius Times, and this is an article December 26, 2016, so it's not too long ago. In 1998 in Mauritius, the entire banknote issue of the country had to be replaced within a given time frame agreed in court, the replacement having been occasioned by the unfortunate hierarchical displacement of the Tamil script appearing on the banknotes in the previous set. Given the agreed time frame for replacement of the to-be demonetized banknotes, the Bank of Mauritius actively caused the new replacement banknotes to be printed well in time and in quantities enough to replace the entire previous banknotes in circulation before the actual banknote exchange began. The changeover was smooth and effective. There were no adverse economic repercussions. The only problem, which reflects the classic reaction of certain members of the Mauritius population, was the last-minute turnout at commercial banks by numerous persons nearer to the day fixed for the final redemption of the impugned banknote issue, despite many communiques having already informed the public of the deadline. But everybody was finally served. So in Mauritius in 1998, not for reasons to go after dirty money, they changed all their banknotes. And what Mauritius did, and I want to commend the persons who have been involved in this exercise, learning from the mistakes made by other countries. One of the problems in other countries, India in particular, is they simply didn't have enough banknotes. Yeah, they were printing as they went along, quite correct. But what has been done on this occasion is that the banknotes have been printed and are ready for distribution. So that problem of when you go to do this, you just simply don't have enough cash, that has been dealt with. Insufficiency of new banknotes, that has been addressed. Learning from the mistakes made in other countries. Yes, more than enough, more than adequate. So this has been well planned, as I said. So we made sure that the new notes were designed, printed, and ready for the changeover. Okay? So that is to deal with the problem that occurred in India. What I might also say, Madam Speaker, just piggybacking on some issues raised by the Attorney General, there were some challenges to this in India, in the courts, but the challenges did not succeed. You know, the Supreme Court of India did not agree that the changeover should be stopped. And as the member for Port Bay North has reminded me, our legislation takes into account all of the potential issues that could be raised. For example, in this bill, for example, we have put in the ability in 27A5 of the minister, in this particular case is the Minister of Finance, the minister may by order extend the date or period in subsections 1 and 4 in any class or class of cases, in any case or class of cases where he considered it appropriate to do so. So whereas we are moving on a timeline, and we are going to make our best effort to get this done within the timeline, if for some reason or another the date has to be extended, it will be. But I can assure you that the plan is now to achieve the objective within the specified time frame, which will become known in due course, not today. And the other safeguard that is in here to deal with a potential legal challenge is that the bank shall redeem at face value any of the specified notes that are presented within the period of 3 months after the appointed date, if it, the bank, is satisfied that the failure to present the notes for redemption prior to the appointed date resulted from circumstances beyond the control of the true owner of the notes, or that there was some good or sufficient reason for the failure. But we're not leaving it up to chance. That is why we have 27A6, that the bank, with the approval of the minister, may prescribe such conditions and procedures as it considers appropriate for the redemption of specified notes in accordance with subsections 3 and 4. And coming back to 5, we have given ourselves the ability not just to extend the date for cancellation, but also the period of redemption. So we've given us the flexibility to extend the date of cancellation, and if after that you get a redemption and there are issues, then we have given ourselves the flexibility to extend that date, and that should deal with most of the legal challenges that may arise. So, Madam Speaker, as I indicated earlier, it is not possible to indicate what the notice date would be at this time. It is not possible to indicate what the appointed day would be at this time. And it is not possible to indicate what the new limits would be, if there are going to be any, at this time. And I thank honourable members for their support, and I beg to move.
Honourable members. The question is that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Proceeds of Crime Act, Chapter 1127, and the Central Bank Act, Chapter 7902, be now read a second time. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
A bill entitled An Act to Amend the Proceeds of Crime Act, Chapter 1127, and the Central Bank Act, Chapter 7902.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. In accordance with Standing Order 68-1, I beg to move that the miscellaneous provisions, proceeds of crime, and Central Bank Bill 2019 be committed to a committee of the whole.
Honourable members, the question is that the miscellaneous provisions, proceeds of crime, and Central Bank Bill 2019 be committed to the committee of the whole. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. This House will now go into the committee of the whole to consider the bill clause by clause.
Clauses 1 to 4.
The question is that clauses 1 to 4 stand part of the bill. The question is that clauses 1 to 4 now stand part of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. Clauses 1 to 4 now stand part of the bill. Honourable members, the question is that the bill be now reported to the House. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those against say no. I think the ayes have it. This committee meeting is now suspended. The House will resume. Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I wish to report that the miscellaneous provisions, proceeds of crime, and Central Bank Bill 2019 was considered in Committee of the Whole and approved without amendments. I now beg to move that the House agree with this report from the committee.
Honourable members, the question is that this House agree with the committee's report on the miscellaneous provisions, proceeds of crime, and Central Bank Act 2019. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it. The Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg to move that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Proceeds of Crime Act, Chapter 1127, and the Central Bank Act, Chapter 7902, be forthwith read a third time and passed.
Honourable members, the question is that a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Proceeds of Crime Act, Chapter 1127, and the Central Bank Act, Chapter 7902, be forthwith read a third time and passed. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it.
Mr. Imbert?
Yes.
Dr. Rowley?
Yes.
Mr. Alwari?
Aye.
Mr. Young?
Yes.
Mrs. Robinson-Ridgey?
Aye.
Mr. Hines?
Aye.
Mr. Mitchell?
Aye.
Ms. Kudrow?
Aye.
Mr. Garcia?
Aye.
Mrs. Critchlow-Coburn?
Aye.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Dillon,
Aye.
Mrs. Webster Roy,
Aye.
Dr. Gatsby Dolly,
Aye.
Dr. Francis,
Yes.
Mrs. Jennings Smith,
Aye.
Miss Oliver,
Yes.
Mr. Leon,
Yes.
Mr. Antoine,
Yes.
Mr. Coffey,
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Mr. Charles,
Yes.
Dr. Ramachan,
Yes.
Mr. Karam,
Yes.
Dr. Munilal,
Yes. Should have been more draconian.
Dr. Gopi Singh,
Yes.
Mrs. Gardine Gopi Singh,
Yes.
Mr. Indar Singh,
Yes.
Dr. Khan,
Yes.
Ms. Ramdial,
Yes.
Mr. Singh,
Yes.
Speaker, the results of the decision as follows: 31 members voting for, 0 against, 0 abstentions.
Members on a division, 31 members voted for. There were no votes against, and there were no abstentions. The motion is carried.
Titled An Act to Amend the Proceeds of Crime Act, Chapter 1127, and the Central Bank Act, Chapter 7902.
Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to move that this House do now adjourn to Wednesday, the 12th? The 11th day of December 2019. On that day, we will do an act to provide for the regulatory control of the handling of cannabis for certain purposes, the establishment of the Trinidad and Tobago Cannabis Licensing Authority and connected matters, and a bill entitled An Act to Amend the Dangerous Drugs Act, Chapter 1125, at 1:30, ma'am.
Honourable members, the question is that this House do now adjourn to Wednesday, the 11th of December, 2019, at 1:30 p.m. All in favor say aye. Any against? I think the ayes have it. This House now stands adjourned to Wednesday, the 11th of December, 2019, at 1:30 p.m.